In the first quarter of the 20th century, archaeologists began to unearth the remains from under tons of volcanic rock. What they encountered was a piece of history 2,000 years old, totally unspoiled. The disaster had struck the people of Pompeii so suddenly that everything stayed just as it had been 2,000 years ago, as if time had stood still. Despite the terrible eruption of Vesuvius, nobody fled, but just turned into stone where they stood. The faces, and even the teeth of some of these bodies remained completely intact. The thing they almost all had in common was their expression of surprise and terror. A family eating together were petrified at that exact moment. Even the food on the table has been preserved.
Just across the street from the brothel is a building known as the Hotel of the Christians. This building contains many small rooms, and it bears graffiti containing the word Christianos. Professor Rebecca Benefiel is an expert on graffiti in Pompeii.
And we're heading into the atrium. This is called the Hotel of the Christians, partly because there are many small rooms around the atrium, so it's thought that this could have served as some sort of hospitality establishment, but of the Christians, because very early on in 1862, there was discovered a very enigmatic graffito. But there's this one word that has fascinated everyone, Christianos. Because it was written in charcoal, it just needed a few rains and some sun, and it disappeared within 2 years. But in the short time between its discovery and its disappearance, there was only time for 2 experts to make tracings of it. So everyone has been working off of these tracings that were done in 1862.
Then it would be the earliest archeological attestation to the word Christian anywhere.
Christianos, yeah, as an identity.
Now, the problem was that nobody could make heads or tails of it, correct?
Pretty much. There's a lot of writing, obviously. It's more than one word. But the writing around it seems to be pretty puzzling.
And gibberish. So in 1926, Professor Newbold comes up with the idea that what?
Comes up with the idea that we have an inscription that mentions Christianos that is transliterated Aramaic, and it's written in Latin characters.
To find the meaning, you swap the Latin letters for Aramaic letters.
When you do that, you know, I can even understand from modern Hebrew. It says, a strange mind has overtaken A, doesn't mention who A is, who is now being held as a prisoner among the Christians.
Before converting to Christianity, A was probably a regular user of the neighboring brothel, but he stopped after converting to Christianity. His former friends wrote this graffiti because they could not understand his change of heart. Paccio Proculo was a baker in Pompeii, and archaeological evidence shows that he was a Christian. The evidence includes graffiti, the removal of pagan symbols, a Sator square, and the display of a Christian cross. Professor James Tabor describes the graffiti that was found at the entrance of the house.
You always want to start with what's the clearest, and this is a cherem, C-H-E-R-E-M, is a transliteration of a Hebrew word. And it's often in the Hebrew Bible, the Old Testament. So it's always used for divine retributions, just blotting out. And then poineum, it's written in Latin. It's an attempt to represent a Greek word, poine, a blow or a strike.
Ponium cherem, it means to strike with utter destruction.
Exactly. And these are the 5-pointed stars, Solomonic, as if to bring power to a kind of a curse, maybe.
This curse acted as an amulet to ward off the immoral activity that was rampant in Pompeii. The same building that contains this graffiti originally displayed pagan sexual imagery. The baker, who wrote the graffiti, covered up the pagan imagery with plaster. This plaster is now mostly faded, but it can still be seen. This is evidence that the baker was not a pagan, but was a Christian. In the same bakery, archaeologists discovered a Christian cross, in the form of graffiti, above the oven. The graffiti no longer exists, but a sketch was made and published. The same house also contained a Sator square found near the biblical curse graffiti. The Sator square is a word square containing a Latin palindrome featuring the words Sator, repo, tenet, opera, and rhodas. The Sator square is commonly acknowledged as a Christian symbol. They have been found in many locations throughout Western Europe, including Greece, Italy, Spain, Portugal, Germany, Austria, Hungary, and Syria. In all cases, they were found at Christian sites. Dr. Finkel comments on the Sator square.
The likelihood is that it's an early Christian device in which they wanted to write the words Pater Noster in such a way that it wasn't obvious that that's what it was.
A second Sator square was also uncovered in Pompeii. This square has a Christian fish symbol above it. The Christian fish symbol, also called ichthyes, is a widely recognized symbol of Christianity. Herculaneum is a nearby city that was also buried in the eruption. Archaeologists uncovered the clear imprint of a Christian cross that had been nailed to the wall. An altar was placed in front of the cross. This find provides further evidence of Christianity in Pompeii, in the year 79 AD. The evidence in Pompeii proves that Christians were an identifiable group in the 1st century, and that Christianity spread quickly in the Roman world, soon after the resurrection. These conclusions are also supported by Tacitus, a 1st-century Roman historian, who mentions Christ by name, and his followers living in Rome. Pliny the Younger, a Roman governor, also wrote of Christians. Josephus, a 1st-century Jewish historian, mentions Christ in 2 different passages, and mentions his Christian followers once. These non-Christian sources support the biblical record of how the apostles preached Christ throughout the Roman world, starting in Jerusalem, the site of the crucifixion. After his death, over 500 people witnessed the resurrected Jesus. Some of these were enemies of Jesus. Paul of Tarsus, a well-educated Roman citizen and Jew, persecuted Christians until he himself witnessed the risen Christ. He then became a zealous follower, and he preached that faith in Jesus leads to eternal life. The apostles never recanted their eyewitness testimony regarding Jesus, even under torture and death.